get a lot of people in the chat that are clamoring for Randy Shannon to be the DC.
Okay.
You take this one because I think we have a different opinion, so I want to hear yours first, James.
All right. Why? Randy Shannon has never had a top 15 in the modern era. Randy Shannon has never had the success that Florida State's defense has had this season. Randy Shannon's problem is the same problem that Mickey Andrews had. He couldn't stop the spread. Same problem that Kevin Steele has had, and why he's been fired at every stop. Eventually, people figure him out. I think what people have done, and this is why I always tell people, you have to consume all media. Mark Rogers, Fifth Quarter, Game Day, whatever they're doing at On 3 or 247. Go, NBC. Check out my guy Jay Peasy.
Thank you.
I say this to say, and then also do things on your own. And I think I have the raw data here. Because I've been looking at it because people have been making this dumb argument the entire time. Florida State. Just make sure this is the right year. Yes, it's 2002. Right now has the fourth ranked passing yards allowed. Mm-hmm. You've got the number 14 overall defense in the nation. I just told you all the quarterbacks that you went up against. Your defense is performing at a high level and you still have holes. There's never been a situation where the guys weren't in position to make the play. They just didn't make the play. That's the thing. Like, as we say in coaching circles, the only thing I could have done better for you is run the play for you. And I think people have had this thing on Fuller's because you didn't know who Fuller was. He's not a name. Which I'd argue that most coordinators that are really, really good in sports, you have no idea who they are. You only know who Randy Shannon is because, one, he's been at every school in the state of Florida. But he was part of Miami when Miami was good in the last time they won a national championship. And he was the head coach. But what Fuller's been able to do at Florida State and the jumps that they have made each year has been astronomical. Especially when you look at the attrition. What you feel and what you have been told is that he's not a good recruiter. What you feel and what you have been told is that he is not a good coach. The problem with both of those things is that the data does not match what your feelings are. See, feelings are relative. I can only argue. It's kind of like I talked about Miami. What do you have tangible that proves that he's not a good defensive coordinator? Even when you talk, and then on top of that, let's talk about games. How many times over the 3 years has Fuller been put in some situations that were bogus? Nobody goes for it for fourth and 2 inside of their own 40. That is just not good football. That is not complimentary football. Don't care what the analytics say. How many times have we seen Mike Norvell, which again, gamble, but how many times have we seen Mike Norvell take that gamble, fail, and then the defense have to come right back out there and do stuff? How many 3-and-outs? When you look at what they did against LSU, FSU dominated LSU into the last 5 minutes of the game. They had 2 great drives. One of the drives would have been negated had they just not fumbled it on the 1-yard line. Complimentary football. They have not had one passer throw for over 250 yards this season. The best passing game was 240-something yards by Malik Cunningham. Not even Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman had, I think, 223 yards. Everybody else literally it was a governor. It's like almost a governor. Those top quarterbacks that I named did not go over 208. Most of them didn't go over 175. How do you get rid of a coordinator that does that for you with most of the guys coming back? Unless you're making an upgrade from Mark Stoops, who went to go get a head coaching job, and you're bringing in Jeremy Pruitt. I would not do that. Now, I'll do that for Jim Leonard, the Wisconsin defensive coordinator, but I'd be damned if I do that for Randy Shannon. Because I've seen Randy Shannon as the defensive coordinator at the University of Florida. I've seen Randy Shannon as the defensive coordinator at UCF. I've seen Randy Shannon toward the end of the years at Miami. And you know what we saw? We saw a lot more points and a lot more BS and a lot more blown coverages and a lot more missed assignments than you could ever count on what you've seen with Florida State with Coach Fuller. So I just think people got to be careful what you've been told, because what you've been told is not necessarily provable, in my opinion.
I will go on record as saying I thought Randy Shannon should have gotten the defensive coordinator job after last season. Because I know Randy Shannon personally. I've covered Randy Shannon when he was the head coach here at the University of Miami. And I will say, I don't equate what he did when he was the defensive coordinator at UCF and UF, because I believe those were different players than what he had when he was the defensive coordinator at Miami. That was a much different team that he was dealing with, and much better players he was dealing with at Miami than he ever dealt with at both Florida and UCF. That being said, I'm going to keep it simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it didn't break. And you look at, yes, did we give up 38 points to Florida? Yes. Did we give up 34 points to Clemson? Yes. Did we give up 31 points to Wake Forest? Yes, we did. Well, what did we do the rest of the season? 7 points to Duquesne, 23 to LSU. Yeah, we gave 31 to Louisville, 14 to Boston College, 19 to NC State, 16 to Georgia Tech, 3 to Miami, 3 to Syracuse, 17 to Louisiana. The defense, for the most part this season, was light years better than what we've seen before. If the defense had showed up the same way it did in 2021 this season, yes, absolutely, I would agree 100%. It would be time for a change. But it is a 180-degree different defense in 2022 from what we'd seen in previous years. So I don't think, aside from Adam Fuller leaving to take a head coaching job, which I don't believe he's being offered one, stick with it.
And one more thing too, I'd say look at his second half adjustments. Mm-hmm. It's insane, the second half adjustments. Wake Forest scored on the first drive of the second half, did not score again until they got a field goal to basically seal the win. Offense just ran out of time from scoring points. NC State scored one touchdown. All Florida State had to do was, like, if the kicker could make one kick, Florida State wins that game. But we didn't score enough. Clemson, if you go back and you look, like, Clemson scored no points, I believe. I think they got a little bit in the third quarter, but they got blanked the rest of the half. We just didn't put up the fight. Florida, most of the adjustments they made in the second half, for the most part, was great. I think that's just kind of something else that I think people take advantage or take for granted when it comes to Fuller.
So where's that coming from? This Adam Fuller hate? You made a great case. I love the quarterback case because that didn't really hit me, and I'm a guy that digests this information constantly every day, that you got this succession of ACC quarterbacks, which I, coming into this season, thought this is the best conference for quarterbacks. It was last year and will be this year, and they didn't put up numbers against FSU. And I'm a big yards per play guy. I see Florida State's 11th in the country in yards per play, and what I already stated a few minutes ago is what I consider to be by far the toughest schedule in the conference. Where's this coming from?
Well, in the beginning, again, out of all of the coaches, people wanted Glenn Schumann. I believe that's it, Glenn Schumann, or my guy who's at Oregon right now, Dan Lanning. These are the guys that, because they had them Norvell ties, those are the guys that we wanted, and they are coming from schools that are sexy. So you don't get those guys. So you feel like, okay, now I'm going to go bring my guy from Memphis who I'm comfortable with. And then when you look at how it was reported during COVID, and I remember and this is what made people think that I didn't like Mike Norvell. It was just that I am a stickler for consistency. If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So people were saying our defense wasn't stopping anybody. I was saying we're not scoring any points. What do you mean the defense isn't stopping anybody? You got to score points. And they're like, well, the offense isn't clicking because of COVID. And I asked, was there some secret rule in the NCAA that said the defense could practice during COVID when the offense couldn't? It was just very easy because, and I would say this too, the climate was extremely toxic because we did something that was unprecedented. And I'd argue too that people argue sports and politics far too similar. You don't argue to have great conversations or discourse. You argue to win. And then what happens when you can't prove your point, you start playing the dozens. You start picking on each other. You reduce the name calling. So it's easier to say that somebody's not any good than it is to actually look at the fact that maybe as a team we aren't any good. You have articles that are written about our team is young and our team isn't talented, but then articles that are written of it's the defense's fault. And they're bringing up the statistics. And when you look at who made the biggest jump last season, it was the defense that literally cut their ranking in half, if I remember correctly, from being in the 100s to being in, was it top 60-ish? Something like that. And then you saw the next move forward. It's progression. I'd also say is the other reason why is this is the first time our guys have had a consistent defensive coordinator for 3 straight years. Same thing with the offense. The offense is better because you've had the same voice and the same plays for 3 years, basically. But I think it's just he was the fun guy to pick on. Woodson was a cooler hire because he's coming from a bigger school, Auburn. Everybody thought he was going to get Travis Hunter. You just felt like it's cooler. And again, it's just he's the guy on the staff that you don't know, and he's easy to pick on. He's older. He's not cool. He doesn't there's nothing. He doesn't have a nickname for his defense. But I'll say if you want to know who he is as a man and as a coach, go. I think is it Brandon Snowcone? One of them cats posted something up there about the recruiting of a defensive end, and it was recorded, and him talking about being a star. And him just, really just casting the vision of him coming to Florida State and being the next Jermaine Johnson, being the next Jared Verse, being the next defensive end, maybe coming in there being like Patrick Payton. And then I also remember this. If anybody wants to know who to like and when the season's going to be going, my oldest son is basically the groundhog from Groundhog Day. He will tell you if things are going to come. The only coach that he liked was Fuller. He's always liked Coach Fuller. Coach Fuller had a 30-minute conversation with him about Pop Warner football last Thursday night before when we did the walkthrough. And the reason why I knew this season was going to be good, my son has never smiled at Mike Norvell. Actually, just mean mug Mike Norvell. Never happy. Mike's always happy to see him. He's never happy to see Mike. Do you know what he did this year? The first time he saw Mike Norvell, big old Kool-Aid smile. And I actually had some friends being like, "Oh crap, this season might be different." Trey actually smiled at Mike Norvell. Trey used to look at some of these coaches and players like, why does my dad's always talking about the standard, and he's got me around a bunch of these losers. I don't like hanging around losers. That was the face that he made. But this year it was just different. He walked over and he was like, he gave the approval. So, but again, Fuller is I just think people just like picking on Fuller for whatever reason.